Alright, what's up everybody? This is Zal here from Geek Paradise Entertainment and I'm joined again by Bashar. Say hi.
Hello.
And we are here again this week to talk about the Arrowverse shows, specifically Arrow, The Flash, Supergirl, and DC Legends of Tomorrow, the current seasons 2017. So let's get into it. We were going to post a video last week for week 6, but we had some technical difficulties and time restraints. So we're going to combine week 6 and 7 into this video and then also talk a little bit about the crossover event happening tomorrow. We're recording this on Sunday, the night before the first crossover episode of Supergirl, which I'm really excited for. So yeah, so let's get into it. So week 6 was a really good week. I feel like they had every show had a really good episode in week 6 and 7, as opposed to like previous weeks where like you could easily tell which show had the stronger episode. I feel like week 6 and 7 they were all pretty much up there. Nothing really disappointed.
Yeah, they were quite balanced, you could say.
Yeah, yeah. What did you feel like was the strongest episode from week 6 out of the 4 shows?
The strongest episode
Like
from
what?
week 6.
Yeah, like which show impressed you the most?
Midvale, the Supergirl episode.
Absolutely. I
That was
completely
probably
agree.
it really goes to show how much the show itself has matured in a way,
Yeah,
growing out and stepping into more interesting territory. And it's partly a result of the whole season itself being much more developed than previously.
exactly. I couldn't have said better myself. That's exactly why I really enjoyed Midvale too, because it's just like I said in our last video, um, that Supergirl this season is really stepping it up. The writing is just so much better on the show. The acting is so much better. The scenarios, the storylines, the plots, it's just everything is just you can easily tell there was a huge improvement from the last 2 seasons, especially from the last season, because yeah, the last season was a mess, but this season it's just really good. And as far as prequel and origin stories go, this was one of the more impressive ones that I've seen, like one of the more coherent, and I felt like they set up the relationship between the Denver sisters, Alex and Kara, really well. They set up like they had like a good dynamic going on in high school, and it made sense, like you have an adoptive sister who's a god, who's an alien god. You're gonna be jealous. You're gonna have, childish rivalry with them. You're gonna,
Yeah,
they're gonna be
like
weird because they're super strong or they
yeah,
think
and
differently. So they're not
it
gonna
makes
be,
sense
yeah,
it makes sense in continuity too,
yeah,
because I think Alex did mention very early in Supergirl, in the very beginnings of season 1, that she used to hate her or whatever, and
yeah.
like whatever.
Yeah, I remember that too. Exactly. Like that's also another good point to add to it, because it keeps the continuity of the show. It didn't show them as kids like, oh, getting along perfectly well and having the best time. It's like, oh, that doesn't really add up to what the show told us before. So
Exactly.
so that's why I feel like it was a really strong episode. They had a lot of different plot points too in the episode, with like all the different mysteries they solved, like with underage
There was the death of the kid. There
right,
was the pedophile teacher,
right.
and then there was the drug running scheme that the cop was running.
Oh, well, yeah, yeah.
That was basically it. It was a triple
Bust.
knockout,
Yeah.
basically. Triple
Triple
bust.
knockout, yeah. Yeah, so they solved all those crimes, and they got the asshole quarterback who made that terribly insensitive joke off the sports team. When they made the
Yeah.
South Park joke about, oh my god, they killed Kenny because the kid's name was Kenny who got murdered by a police officer. I'm like, oh, that's not really a joke you make as a child when a schoolmate dies, even if it was someone you bullied and hated. It's like, that's what kids
Yeah,
do.
even
Kids are
even
just
even
assholes.
yeah, even if he was a jerk ass, like some people tend to have more decency. In theory, anyways. I don't know.
Yeah.
Maybe some people were actually like beyond horrible at some point. I wouldn't know.
Yeah, I mean, there are definitely people who are shitty like that, but I feel like, yeah, I feel like if I were to nitpick the episode, I would say the kids were a little too mean, especially the quarterback with that South Park joke. I mean, I know they probably
Mm.
just wanted to do it for the South Park reference, but I'm like, oh, come on, guys,
Yeah,
that's
I'm
so mean.
100%. Yeah, I'm 100% sure a lot of the stuff that the show writers do, they tend to try and throw some pun in there. Like, particularly in mind is the Arrow episode, but we'll get to that when we get to that.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. Like with this one, I just felt like it was just not really tasteful the way they used that "they killed Kenny" joke. It's like a child got murdered, and
Yeah.
his classmates are just making these jokes. Like even if they hated him, they would still probably like feel some kind of sympathy or get hit with the realization that death happens at any time, not just when you're old. So they would at least like straighten up a little bit, but. And especially if you don't want to be looked at as a suspect, like, bro, come on. Like, everyone knows you hate this kid, now you're making jokes about his death, like, that's not cool. But, yeah, other than that, I feel like it was a very, very strong episode. And yeah, I really liked the whole thing with John Jones shapeshifting as Kara's mom.
Yeah, that was smart actually.
Because in the
Because
yeah.
sorry, go on.
No, I was just gonna say, because in the previews, I was like, what? Why is this? How is she here? You know, she's supposed to be dead. She blew up on a planet many years ago. So it was good to like tease that and then show us what it was like in that way, showing us it was John Jones who had
Mhm.
had contact with Kara and Alex at such a young age, and they foreshadowed Alex getting into the police force with like, or getting into law enforcement with I think the sheriff was actually telling her like, hey, you should look into getting into law enforcement, and she was like not interested at all. But it's funny how that stuff comes full circle. But
Yeah, right.
yeah, but it's definitely a strong episode. Alright, so let's talk about the next show that's up, The Flash. Let's talk about The Flash, episode 6, When Harry Met Harry.
Oh
um,
boy, the Rick and Morty reference had to come up at some point.
I felt like this episode was really well done. The humor in it wasn't too much. They definitely tried to make it more funny. I like how this season is trying to get back to the old vibes of The Flash that initially got me really interested in it. That it was like lighthearted and like fun, but also like took it serious when it needed to.
Yeah.
As opposed to like season 3, which was just completely just way too serious,
Dark,
just so
dark, dark,
dreary and
dark,
dark.
dark.
Yeah, it was like watching Batman vs Superman for like a whole season. It's like a whole season of just Batman vs Superman tone.
Except it was probably better than the actual Batman versus Superman.
Yeah, for the most part, except for the second half, but for the most part, yeah. I really like the tone of the current season of The Flash, and episode 6 was definitely trying to be more lighthearted than the previous episodes. Like they had some hit or miss moments, like with the previous episodes when they were at couples therapy and they kind of joked about everyone who died up till this point.
Yeah, and we were thinking, okay, it wasn't that funny when it happened.
Right, like that was kind of like forced humor, like okay, haha, really wasn't funny. You broke time like 3 times because of that, or twice, or whatever.
Yeah.
Literally, like broke time. But now you're joking about it. Okay, so that was like kind of weird, but this episode it was
To be
pretty good.
fair, what else would they have said in front of her?
I feel like they just shouldn't have really talked about that too much, or just like made it feel so nonchalant, like be like, like yeah, they passed away, but we've learned to get over it or whatever, just like make it feel like they were actually impacted as human beings by their deaths, and not just like, oh, they died, we're over it, it's fine, it's cool. No need to really dwell on that too much. Like they made the joke, it didn't really go that well, but yeah, episode 6 they made some really funny jokes, like with the Gandalf version of Harrison Wells.
Jesus, man, like what's next? Harry Potter, Oliver Queen? Which somehow makes a lot more sense now that I'm saying it.
Oh no, that's what they should have done, is just Harry Potter. Harrison Wells,
Oh.
Harry Potter.
Hey! Oh god. That was both really smart and also kind of terrible.
I feel like that's what they thought in the writing room. They're like, no, too on the nose.
Yeah, it's too obvious.
So let's make it Gandalf, but people will still a wizard of some kind.
Yeah. And thankfully he didn't last too long. Because
Yeah.
then that would have been like, okay. You're
Yeah.
milking the joke now.
I want them to
Too
bring back the
much.
Council of Wells later, but like with even more Harrison Wells. Like I was hoping for like a few more characters, like a few more versions of him, but of course, it's just, it's a TV show, the TV show budget, as well as the show is run and how well it looks, it's still like on a TV show budget, so they can't bring in like 100 different versions of him with 100 different costumes and variations and voices to record and all that stuff.
Yeah,
But
yeah, yeah. It's too much effort.
yeah, but he's such a fantastic actor. Like, uh, he
He's a
just.
fantastic actor and a good director too.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Any episode he directs is always like Tom Cavanagh. Any episode he directs is always just like fantastic. Like last season, we are talking about season 3 of The Flash, second half. Like the episodes he directed where he goes to the future, that was really fantastic. Like that was a good episode. So it's always nice to see his work like come to the forefront of the show. Like when he does these different characters, when he's in disguise, as when he does like this current episode when they had the flashbacks of Eobard Harrison Wells.
Hmm.
They obviously shot some new scenes for that, and he still plays him as well as he did in season 1. Like I felt like I was watching season 1 Harrison Wells again, which was really nice. Um, and that was
Yeah.
and that was a
Go on.
oh yeah, but we're talking about episode 6 first. We'll talk about that when we get to episode 7. Um, but yeah, I think my favorite one was Mad Max, Mad Max Earth Harrison Wells.
There was Mad Max, Harrison Wells. There was German artist, was it?
Yeah, like a German
Harrison Wells.
inventor or something, or an art. Yeah,
Yeah.
something like that. And then and then the rich billionaire inventor also who was just getting getting his freak on all the time, calling
Oh
him
my god.
calling him at the wrong time. he made some
The worst time ever.
he had some
Poor
funny
Cisco
lines.
getting like that image engraved in his head for good.
Poor Cisco. Yeah, that was one of the funniest moments. He was definitely one of the funniest characters on in the whole episode. He had some really funny lines.
Hmm.
Um, but yeah, like the rest of the plot of the episode was really fantastic. I thought the Harrison Wells stuff was gonna be the main plot point, but it did serve the main plot point, which is finding out that Clifford DeVoe was the DeVoe they were looking for. But the villain of the episode they had was really cool too. The Black Bison, who is a male in the comics, but as the show tends to do sometimes, like with the top, and now with Black Bison, they've gender bent them to, now it's a female.
Yeah,
But
they,
it
they
doesn't
tend
really
to like.
change anything that is really fundamental about the
Yeah,
character, so it's not a big
yeah,
deal.
yeah, they tend to do that a lot these days. Marvel and DC, they really tend to change their characters around because back then it was all white people, white people, white people, and I don't
It
want to
was
go into this whole identity politics stuff,
right,
but the way they're approaching it, the way they're changing the characters, like for example, in their Thor Ragnarok with Valkyrie, it
right.
was originally she was as Valkyries originally were. They were blonde with white skin,
Well, they did
but they
show
changed it.
they did show the comic book Valkyrie was the one in the flashback that Valkyrie had. The
Mhm.
blonde white Valkyrie who was in the flashback she had, that was the comic book Valkyrie. Like that character was the character in the comic book who is Valkyrie. But she
Yeah, which
but that
makes
scene
yeah,
was
but
kind of her like passing the metaphorical torch on to this Valkyrie as like you're the Valkyrie now. Which was
yeah,
cool.
yeah, yeah.
It was cool to
Even
still
though
include the it
like
was still cool to include the OG Valkyrie but still show her metaphorically passing the torch to the new
like
Valkyrie.
I want to go into more detail about this, but we're already digressing enough as it is.
Right, yeah.
There's- they tend to do this where they change uh, they change the appearance of characters, but they don't change who the characters are, which is what's important to be honest.
Exactly. Like fundamentally the characters are still the same, but the look, of course, like you said back then, it was predominantly white males, which isn't, a bad thing. But now that we have more options for diversity, more open-mindedness towards diversity, we can have more diverse characters, which also isn't a bad thing. It's a good
Exactly.
thing. It's good to see more, cultures being embraced and represented in these different forms of media because now the audience for this media has completely changed. It's global. Like everyone from all over the world watches these shows and reads the comics. So it's always nice to feel like oh look, they have an Arab character that's represented in a way that he's not a terrorist. That's nice. Like
Yeah, exactly.
it's nice to see things like that in comic books, and it definitely makes the viewers feel more attached and connected to the characters. So I liked her plot, but as um as we discussed off camera before, we were talking about like how like her cause was good, but her methods were kind of shitty. Like I would have
Yeah,
sympathized with
yeah,
her
yeah.
more as a villain if she wasn't murdering people for her cause. Which I,
That's true.
which
That's
again,
true.
like I completely support her cause. Like just like as a concept, like okay, these artifacts do belong to a tribe that still exists. Like the people that still are around, they should have the sacred artifact within their people. But now you're going out killing people, which kind of like makes you look bad too. Like now you don't really have a foot to stand on. Like now you're just evil too. Like even if your
Hmm.
cause is still good, now you're just being an asshole. So that kind of like ruins justifying your own methods, or justifying your methods by
Justifying
the
your own
end.
cause.
Yeah. But I did like that the whole character arc with Ralph throughout the episode, where he kind of sees that the important thing about being a superhero is that you are saving people rather than catching bad guys. Like catching bad guys is important, but saving people comes first. And his whole character arc throughout the episode, even though it got me really infuriated at this one moment with the Flash, where he got hit by a really slow moving animated statue, which again we talked about, like he's a god, a speed god that gets hit by normal ass shit, which just like it's infuriating to watch sometimes, but it serves the plot in a good way, I guess. So it's
Yeah,
fine.
but it reminds me of something else also in Arrow, and again, we'll get to that when we get to that.
Right, like it's infuriating when it happens, but then in the important parts where it counts, he is using his speed like he should. You know, like
Hmm.
some previews for the crossover show him using it pretty well. So I mean, it's okay. It's okay. He can run fast enough to stop time, but to run back and forward through time, but he can't see a swing from an animated statue coming. But whatever.
Yeah, like just drop it and watch. Don't think about it.
Yeah. But I did like how by the end of the episode Ralph did the right thing by sending the artifact back to the tribe and not sending it back to the actual museums and stuff. Like he fulfilled Black Bison's goal, but in the best way possible. And I like that Barry
Exactly.
was happy about that too. Barry was like,
Mhm.
"That's that was a good move, man. Like that was the right thing to do." And he I feel like him and the Flash kind of got closer this episode, like him and Barry, because they were more like, because they're more like rivals. But then this episode they kind of got closer, and oh man, the beginning of the episode was hilarious. Because remember in season one when he got mugged and he was like just making fun of the mugger, and he was like, "Oh my God, you must be the unluckiest mugger of all time, because you're trying to mug the Flash." And this time,
Yeah,
this I think it was the same actor. I don't remember. I have to watch the season one episode, but it was another mugger who's trying to mug the Flash and the elongated man this time. It's like how
yeah,
unlucky do you have to be that your mugging victims are both superheroes?
yeah, and like especially what happened to him the second time around.
Yeah, basically shot himself.
Twice.
Absolutely hilarious, but yeah, overall good episode, set up some good plot points, and I like that they're going faster and faster with this villain reveal stuff. I mean, we already know who the villain is, but like the team doesn't know. I mean, now they do in this after episode 7, but I like how they're going a lot faster now, no pun intended, with setting up the villain, getting all the backstory stuff out of the way, so we can get into the actual like hero versus villain stuff. Like
Yeah.
them actually like fighting each other, like, or like playing their game out, and not just the whole season. It's just like, oh, who is it? Who is it? Who is it? Like last season,
Yeah, like,
21
it's
episodes
shoving
of
it in your face. This is the person. Get it over with.
yeah. This is the villain. This is his plan. This is how they're figuring it out, and they're making good progress, and they have figured it out.
They didn't tell us what the plan was yet.
Oh, right, right. I mean, we know some of the plan, which was him doing the metahuman bus thing. Opening up like having the Flash come out of that specific location where the bus was and making those metahumans. Like that's part of his plan. So at least we know part of his plan. And I'm sure the language
Exactly.
that Flash knows that he comes out of the Speed Force with is gonna play into that plan at some point. But
Mhm.
that's gonna have to be found out later. Alright, so let's get into the next show on the list, which is DC Legends. Helen Hunt was episode 6, and that was the episode where they went back to Hollywoodland, which was Hollywood's name in the 30s, and
Mm-hmm.
they had Helen of Troy, like the actual Helen of Troy, in the episode, and she seemed to have like almost she seemed to have almost a supernatural power to make men fight, like more than just like, oh, she's gorgeous, let's fight over her. It's like almost supernatural. Like she had an aura of just like, you know, just like
Yeah, yeah,
anger.
pure. What's it called? Getting men to fight over her,
Yeah,
which was well, kind of like wow. I mean,
it's pretty cool.
shit. I would not want to be caught around that one. Trust.
I feel like they had a lot of really good moments too. I like the side plot with them switching bodies when they were with Jackson and Martin Stein switching bodies when they were trying to put the Firestorm just into Jax, because what they're trying to do is have Martin Stein leave the show in a way that makes sense, because the actor himself is doing some Broadway stuff this year, so he's not gonna
Mm.
be on too much for the rest of the season. So I like that there wasn't just like a one episode where they solved the problem and now he's gone. Like it's still going on. Like it started happening in episode 6 where they started to fix him, but it didn't work. They had the Freaky Friday body switch thing,
Yeah, yeah.
and
I know.
then
I know for a fact that this is a prediction that I'm having. Martin Stein is going to sacrifice himself in some way during the Crisis crossover. How do I?
no.
This is a prediction I have. How do I know this? Because the actor for Martin Stein is leaving, and
Mhm.
the creators of the show said when they were discussing the Crisis crossover that they were taking it up a notch with the emotional impact and stuff, and there was going to be some tragedy, and specifically I think they mentioned the fourth part. The fourth part is the Legends of Tomorrow part.
No.
Worst case scenario, he loses his powers and goes back home.
That's the best case scenario. That's what he wants.
Yeah, right, that's right. That is the best case scenario. What's wrong with me?
That's exactly what they want and what we want too. Like that would be the
Exactly.
best thing that would happen. But no, I really hope he doesn't die. I didn't know that. I didn't know that the schedule got changed. I thought they were gonna just have it play out the way it's gonna play out. But I guess then it would be weird to break up the 4 episode story with like a day of nothing in the middle. Because Wednesday nothing happens. Ah,
Mhm.
that makes sense now. Okay, wow. I'm really excited now. There's gonna be 2 episodes tomorrow. Hell yeah. Okay. So yeah, I mean, I really hope Stein doesn't die, but I hope that they do end up figuring out what to do. But yeah, I think I think my favorite part in the episode was at the end when they refused into Firestorm, and it was Martin
Mhm.
Stein's body and not Jack's. It was cool, like just
Yeah,
to
yeah,
see like a
that was
different
nice.
look of Firestorm. Yeah, uh, Firestein.
Firestein.
Damien Dark put Sarah and Lance in a coma for this episode, which I didn't expect to see that happen. I mean, I'm glad. I
Why?
didn't think for a second he was gonna. What?
Why is it every single time Damien Dark is involved, something has to happen with the Lance sisters? This is some serious.
What
This
be-
is some serious like Black Cat under the ladder, broken mirror stuff they have going there.
Well, they have the whole rivalry from years ago, from Arrow, from that season we don't speak of anymore. Oh, but my favorite part from that fight was when he said a line to her, and he was like, "Oh yeah." When Sarah was like, "Let's fight, no magic, just assassin style," and he told her, "I don't need magic to kill you," and she was like, "Funny, that's what Oliver said right before he killed you." Like,
Hey,
ooh,
right.
ooh, burn.
Gets gold.
She burned him. But then he's like, "All right, I'll put you in a coma for that comment."
Yeah, well, I won't. She will.
Yeah, I'm not using magic, but no one said my daughter can't use magic.
Yeah.
But yeah, that was a cool way to kind of have her as, as like the actress, just like relax for a couple of episodes before the crossover, because of course like she's heavily involved in the crossover, so
Yeah,
she was
it's
probably
not.
filming a lot.
It's not. Yeah, it's not only that. There's also the fact that, what's it called? It's nice to showcase that the team can do stuff without her. You know.
Exactly, yeah, and which was shown in episode 7, which we will get to in a minute. Um, But yeah, that was really good episode. Ended really nicely, just a fun plot line. And then the ending of it when Zari took her back to Themyscira instead of taking her back to Troy, because
That was a good reference. That was a very nice touch there. I really liked it.
yeah, just a huge Wonder Woman Easter egg, just like taking her straight to the island, and I liked it because she kind of like when she said like, "Oh, I hacked history," like she kind of like found an exploit in history and took advantage of it. Like, "Oh, I guess you're not really important anymore to this time period." And we saw in episode 7 they even confirmed that by showing that the anachronism wasn't there anymore, even though she
Mm.
wasn't in Troy. But
Yeah,
they found a
it's kind of
loophole.
interesting. Yeah, it's kind of interesting because like the whole inclusion of Helen itself is just a big question mark on the whole history thing, because like going into history lessons here, there was a Trojan War a
Right.
long time ago, but we only get scant references about it because it happened before something called the Dark Ages in Greek history, where there was a complete blackout in civilization. Like we have no idea what was going on there.
Right.
And then it was after that that you have the Persian Wars, the Peloponnesian Wars, and then the Romans and the Macedonians and whatever.
So Helen of Troy in itself is like a really like vague part of history that no one really knows.
It's not
Yeah.
even a big part of history. The only reference to Helen, as far as I can tell, was from the epic poem by Homer in the
Right.
Iliad and the Odyssey, and in the Iliad, not the Odyssey. But other than that, like we're really not sure why the Greeks went to war against Trojans, but probably there was economic reasons, most like trade routes or whatever.
Mhm.
And like other than that, there is no indication that a princess called Helen was involved. Like
Right.
it's kind of like basing your history on World War II from Saving Private Ryan or something. Like it's probably an accurate adaptation, but don't rely on it too much.
Right.
That's all.
The details aren't, necessarily exactly what happened, which really helped serve this episode's ending, where it's like, the details of what happened don't really matter because you weren't really involved. So here you go. You're in a better timeline now. And I
Exactly. That's
felt
what
like
makes
they
it.
were gonna try and do something like that because of how much she said she didn't want to go back to her time, and I was like, ah, that would be kind of shitty if they just rescued her from here and then just took her back to Troy, where she was gonna be basically treated the same way. So that
Exactly.
made me think about like, oh wow, yeah, like what if something like this happens with even more characters, that returning them would be bad for them, but then also taking them somewhere else would be bad for the history, bad for the timeline. It's like they have to make sacrifices, kind of like the situation with Amaya, where she has to go back so her lineage continues, and there's the Vixen in the current timeline, but she goes back, she's gonna get slaughtered, and her whole
Yeah.
family's gonna get slaughtered. But they kind of, I don't know what they really did to solve that this season. They kind of like went around that, found a weird loophole, and just swept it under the rug. And we're like, it's okay. She's on the show,
Yeah.
and Vixen still exists, and there's another granddaughter that
Suppose
exists now.
basically it just means that at some point, the Amaya just goes back to her timeline as normal. That's what's supposed to happen in theory. Like the
But
only
that's what
problem
was
is
supposed to
if something
happen last.
happens.
Sorry.
Yeah, if something happens to her though, then that would be a problem.
Right, but that was what was supposed to happen last season, at the end of last season. But then they were like, we like her character, let's keep her. Which
Yeah, the
I'm
thing
not
is
against. I like her
the
character too.
yeah, like it would be nice to have like the actual what's it called? What's her name? Mari McCabe, but the actress is involved in other projects, so she wasn't able to show up.
Right. Yeah. But
Which is a running thing that tends to happen, but
yeah,
there's not much we can do about it.
it's how it is. Yeah, we can
Yeah,
just enjoy what happens on the shows, and hopefully, like, I like when like stuff like that happens. They find clever ways of like covering it up, or, you know, like clever in-universe ways to like make sense. But yeah, moving on to the last episode we're gonna talk about for week 6, which is the Arrow episode, which was the part 2 of Deathstroke's episode arc. 2 episode arc with Jason. I like that they left it open ended. So where like
hmm
Jason isn't dead and Deathstroke isn't dead, and they're not friends, but they're kind of enemies, but they're not really like friends anymore. Like they're not like working together anymore. So it kind of leaves the door open to like more conflict between them in the future, but also something that could happen with the Titans show. Maybe Jason shows up on a Titans show, causes havoc there, and then the Titans try and get help from Deathstroke. Maybe something like that will happen.
But that's assuming the Titans are even connected to
Sure,
the Arrowverse
yeah,
in the first place.
sure, of course,
There's no
yeah.
indication.
There's no specific rock solid indication right now that like this is in the Arrowverse, but I have a feeling it will be because of that stuff that happened on Arrow, and also Wally coming and going. Like he came back in episode 7 of The Flash at the end of it, which we'll talk about. But you know, he talked about fighting some alien or something like that, which makes me think like there was others.
Starro. He was fighting Starro.
Yeah.
I love that. That was brilliant.
Yeah, so it makes me feel like he was working with a team that was in the city he was in, which is the city, I forgot its name, but it's the city that
He was in the comics, I think.
well, also where the Titans are, right? Isn't that where they are?
I have no clue.
It like it has something to do with the Titans, and it has something to do with him and the Titans in the comics. So like there is like the dots are there, the connections between all the dots are there. So all that's left for them to do is just like confirm that Titans, which is gonna start actually pretty soon in a couple of months, and Black Lightning, that they have to confirm that Titans is part of the Arrowverse by having Wally and Jason and maybe Deathstroke be a part of it.
I'm gonna be very
At some
disappointed if
capacity.
they only. I'm gonna be very disappointed if they only retroactively include them into the Arrowverse. Like after the first season is done, okay, it's part of the Arrowverse now.
Right.
Guys, don't do what Supergirl did. Either make it clear from the beginning or don't.
Well, Supergirl did that because it was on a different network completely, but this is all part of
That's
the
true.
CW.
Yeah,
Yeah.
which makes it even more weird.
Yeah,
But I think it's because the logistics of having to deal with so many shows at once is already a strain.
I understand that, but if you're gonna add a show like Titans to the to like a station that already has an Arrowverse, like come on, it makes no sense not to add them to the Arrowverse too, because that's just more superheroes for the crossovers, which is always good. You know, logistic nightmares, sure, but like, come on, as a fan and as viewers, people don't really think about logistics and stuff, which I guess is why we're sitting here saying, oh, that would be cool if they had it, but then if people working on this heard this, they would be like banging their head against the wall, like, no, we don't want to deal with 6 other people to put in the crossovers and the promos and stuff. But I feel like that would just generate even more hype for it if you had like Nightwing and more recognizable people than Heatwave and Atom. You know, not saying they're bad characters, but they're not as recognizable as Nightwing, you know, not as recognizable as like just the Titans themselves, because everyone our age grew up, like pretty much everyone our age grew up watching the Titans, like Beast Boy, Raven, Nightwing, all these people, like Robin, everyone
This is
grew
the
up.
part where you get to travel over and throw me off the roof for heresy, but I never got around to watching them.
Oh my god, I'll put that on my list of things to do. Push you off the roof for never watching Titans. But it was just one of those animes, slash superhero TV shows that just, it was kind of like an anime. It wasn't really an anime, it was like an animated TV show. It kind of had an anime style.
Superhero shows just become anime themselves.
It was pretty, like, it did have kind of like an anime style to it, but you know what I mean. It was just one of those superhero animated shows that just, like, a lot of people watched and a lot of people loved growing up, so, like, having it as a live action show would be great, but also adding it to the Arrowverse right now would be just even better, because you can borrow and, just, like, have little crossovers here and there, borrow characters from other shows, the other shows could borrow characters from Titans here and there. There's already been references dropped to Bruce Wayne, Batman, so it makes sense that Nightwing would also exist.
There's Themyscira from Wonder Woman.
Exactly, like there's all this outer space stuff that they've been doing, so we know there's other worlds that exist that could have the like where like Raven comes from and Starfire. Like it would just make sense. It would just make sense to have them in the Arrowverse, and I really don't want them to go down the path where they just have it as a standalone show. Because that would just, to me personally, it would make it less interesting. I'm more interested in it personally if it's part of the Arrowverse. But regardless, I'm still gonna watch it.
There's the same thing here. It's probably why like I haven't gotten around to wanting to watch it, mostly because they're not part of the Arrowverse shows. I mean, like I already have enough on my plate. I want I want the show to immerse me in a way.
But yeah, going back to the Arrow episode, which we were talking about originally, episode 6. I knew that the whole arc with Diggle and his drugs was gonna tie into one of the villains this season, Richard Dragon or Caden James, and it tied into Richard Dragon, which made more sense. 'Cause both of them, up to episode 6 at least, seem to be more of like like a toss up as to which of them is gonna be like the big bad or like the bigger bad. But I guess with episode 7 we kind of figured out who's gonna be the bigger bad, which is Caden James. I wouldn't say he's absolutely the big bad right now, because Richard Dragon was he was promoted to be like kind of the big bad, but I feel like this season they might just have two big bads on two different fronts, because the team is so big and can handle, or like can be challenged in different ways. It's not like just one person they have to fight. They can fight like the physical fight with Richard Dragon, then the mental fight with Caden James. I feel like maybe they're going for that, but we'll have to wait and see what happens. But yeah, I knew it was gonna tie back to like someone, and it tied back to Richard Dragon, and yeah, Diggle is in trouble, man. Like I like the side story arc that he had with his decision of like, oh, do I keep like, I feel like I had like this internal struggle of like, do I keep my drug supply up? Like, do I keep my drug supplier like safe, or do I take him down because he's a villain? You know, like it's against my interest to be the hero right now, but I have to be. And you saw it when he looked at the drugs and he's like, oh, it's a whole big box of them. I should just take them, but they all blew up.
Yep.
Which really sucks for him, especially especially this episode when he, because at the end of episode 6, John came clean to most of the team except for Oliver and Felicity. And Curtis told him he could make him this formula or this prototype that could help him instead of the drugs. But we saw in episode 7 that wasn't really working. He was getting withdrawal symptoms from using the drugs. The prototype wasn't really affecting him the way that he thought it would, and I like that this side story is kind of ending soon with him being the Green Arrow, because obviously he's not going to be Green Arrow the whole season, and I appreciate that they're not going to drag it out, because we all know Oliver's going to be Green Arrow next week, or I guess tomorrow.
One more comment about Legends of Tomorrow.
Yeah.
That is how you do a feminist episode.
Oh yeah, forgot we even said that in the last video.
I know I might get some flack from Shiko if this. Which, by the way, shout out to those guys. Go get their shirts; they're actually pretty cool. This is how you do a feminist episode.
Absolutely.
Not what the Flash was doing.
Exactly. Not what the Flash did last week 5, where hashtag feminism was. That shit was. Oh my god! Like, you don't have to say hashtag feminism to be a feminist episode.
You have to show.
You have to
show, not tell.
Show strong women doing strong women shit, instead of women fist bumping and saying hashtag feminism before they go out.
Instead of just telling us she's a feminist, okay.
Or telling,
show me.
Yeah, telling us, oh, these are strong women because they bumped fists and said hashtag feminism. Like, nothing else in the whole show bothered me like that moment. Like, I was gonna throw away the whole TV after watching that. I'm like, nope, it has to go now. I have to cleanse my house. To cleanse my house of this. But yeah, it was just like why do you have to, like, that was some Supergirl season 2 levels of like, why? Of like just in your face like feminism. It's like obviously nothing against feminism, and we're not, you know, obviously like we would consider ourselves like feminists too, like we like, you know, like women's rights are important and everything, like that's not something we're against, but it's just like, if you want to do something in a show that represents strong women and, you know, feminism, you should do it in a way that, like we said, show not tell. Like, show it, like in this like in episode 6 of Legends of Tomorrow, they showed women being badass and, you know, taking care of themselves and helping other women out, and just like just being strong women, instead of, you know, as opposed to season 2 of Supergirl, which every episode shoved something in your face that they said 6-7 times about feminism, which is like, okay, we get it. What's the plot here? What's going on? You know, who is the strong? Why should I care? Yeah, why should I care? And also show me proof of what you're saying. Like, show me the strong women you're talking about. Like, instead of just like just shoving things in my face. And that's the why I love Supergirl so much this season, because they don't do that anymore. But the Flash
Yeah.
decided to for an episode, which was really dumb. But yeah,
It's like it's like everybody who was getting their assignments for the shows got theirs switched somehow.
yeah, it's like last season's
There was a
writers.
shuffle.
Yeah, they gave last season's writers of Supergirl one last chance. They're like, here you go, do episode 5 of The Flash. Then they took him out back and shot them in the head.
Oh God.
Oh my god. But yeah, really good. Kudos to the Legends for doing really good dialogue for them, really good scenes, just everything was just really good. And,
Hmm.
you know, really strong feminist episode again, good point. Thank you for bringing up that good point before we move on to week 7. So
Yes.
week 7, Supergirl was pretty badass. I would say it was a pretty packed episode, lots of different plot points, but
I gotta feel sorry for Kara. I legit gotta feel sorry for.
she I do feel bad for her. She makes the toughest decision, you know, since the beginning of the show, and sends Monel away. Then he comes back for what him seemed like 7 years, and for her was like 7 months. And now he has a wife that Kara also saves at the end of this episode. It's like, oh my god.
Yeah,
Oh, what a low blow. What a low blow
I
to
know, right?
Kara. Like I like legit actually like felt bad for her at that moment. I was like, man, that really sucks.
Like, yeah, exactly. Like, and she has to put up with so much, especially involving him.
Yeah.
Then he comes back, and
And she's finally happy again that he's back. Now he's acting weird, and now he has a wife, and that's why he's acting weird. It's like, man, come on. Why'd you do that to Supergirl? She didn't deserve that. Not this season.
Mhm.
She deserved that last
Exactly.
season, but not this season.
Oh my God.
But no, I like that they're really moving forward with the plot of Rain too, having Samantha go out and like figure out that from her adoptive mother that she was also a Kryptonian, I guess, right? Wasn't she? She's Kryptonian?
Yeah,
Or she
yeah,
wasn't? Yes, that she was also a Kryptonian, that she came on the pod like Supergirl, and she found that crystal that led her to where her version of the Fortress of Solitude is.
yeah.
That was pretty cool. That was like I really enjoyed that, and I really like that they're
Uh,
really moving
uh,
faster
and
with that plot
and
line.
for once, I think when I think maybe I probably talked to you about this like a long time before we started the series. When I was discussing this series with you, particularly Supergirl season 2, I think DC had one of those little hidden drones flying by that picked up conversations, and they picked up on me saying, we need a better villain, a villain that we can root for." No, not root for, but like a villain that we can understand, something like three-dimensional,
And
something tangible,
sympathize
like,
with.
and sympathize with, and understand, and feel like, okay, it's not just like a bland, one-dimensional. Oh, I'm going to blow up the world, or no, even worse, I'm going to save the world while they're blowing it up, which has happened in season 2, which doesn't make any sense at all. Like
Yeah.
they listened and they implemented that. So I would like to thank, I would like to thank the guys in charge of the shows right now. I'm not sure exactly who they are because it keeps changing
Let's
every
just say
once in a while. I think
Berlanti. Let's just say Berlanti.
Berlanti,
Yeah.
Mr. Berlanti. Yes, thank you for listening
Yeah.
and implementing that change.
Yeah. No, really though, but yeah, that's something I really like about these shows this season is that they're not, you know, that they have a really strong villain in each of these shows. Even even Arrow, even though like we're not really sure who it is, Richard Dragon and Caden James are both really interesting I mean, to be honest, but you know, talking about Supergirl, Rain seems pretty interesting because like Samantha doesn't want to be a bad person, but Rain takes over at the end of this episode, and she is evil. She wants to, you know, destroy Supergirl.
Mhm.
But so it's
Like
like
it's her destiny to destroy Supergirl, but like then we're going to go into themes of how much control does destiny take over you?
right, and is it some
That
kind
kind
of
of stuff.
split personality thing again, like with Killer Frost and
Yeah.
Caitlin Snow, or is it just something where like, is it something that like turns on and off? Is it just something that's like slowly taking over her body? Because it did like the person that she was talking to in the ship did say like, oh, it's what's it called? Your childbirth like delayed like the thing from taking over and like making you like fulfill your destiny or whatever. Like that was a miscalculation that she has a kid, and I feel like the kid is gonna play a really huge part in it at the end. You know, like with trying to convince her to be good, because obviously like that's why they have the kid set up as a character and just like giving her so much like screen time and attention. Is like the kid is a huge part of her life as a human being. You know, like her humanity side again. You know what it means to be human is the theme, which you seem to be tired of, but it's okay. That's how it is. With the super show.
I'll roll with it this time. I'll see where it takes us.
Yeah, but you know, like I feel like that theme is really supported by her having that child, and that's really gonna play a huge part in the future of it. I don't think they're really gonna look at her too much as a villain, more of like, hey, stay down when we beat you so that we can beat the evil out of you and everything can go back to normal. And we don't have to kill you or send you into space or poison your lungs like we did with last season. But you know, it's just like one of those things where like you said, it makes a character, it makes a villain more you know, like more three-dimensional. Like I feel for this villain because it's like she doesn't want to be evil. She just, that's just her destiny. That's just her, like an evil spirit taking over her body.
It's her destiny, and she doesn't want it.
Yeah, she doesn't want it.
Especially in relation to her family, like she got really upset when the what's it called, whoever is in charge said that child is just a distraction. She's delay or whatever.
Exactly.
And she's just like, what are you talking about? She's my daughter. How dare you say that?
Yeah.
Stuff.
Yeah, exactly.
So there's also gonna be like this thing about how she's gonna deal with her daughter, knowing that she's destined to become this or whatever. How is the other alternate self going to deal with the daughter? Hopefully nothing bad happens to her, because that would really suck.
Man, if they kill that kid, that would be ballsy. If they have her kill her own kid.
Wow, yeah, then that would be stepping into new territory that I don't think they would have considered.
I wouldn't really mind it. You know, obviously I don't want to see a child die on TV. You know, that's fucked up. But like, on a TV show like this to like serve the plot, if they want to make her go full evil, like how Kylo Ren killed Han Solo. Spoilers, I guess, if you haven't seen a movie from 2 years ago.
Yeah, but if you haven't seen this movie at this point, please tell us how you're able to breathe on the moons of Saturn. Okay.
Seriously, or haven't even heard the reference of that scene. But you know,
if you haven't seen a meme of that, okay, then you would have problems.
Exactly.
How are you even able to get access to this video in the first place?
Exactly. Oh my god, it's like someone who just woke up from a coma and this is the first video they watch.
Oh boy, I can't wait to see Han Solo again.
About that. But
yeah. Anyways, where were we again?
yeah, we were talking about like how how her story could play out. I mean, honestly, that would be kind of cool. Like if they make her go full evil and just do that, and then she's like irredeemable, and that's kind of like her tragic story of like she was a good person. Her goal was to help people. She had a child, and then by the end of the season, she got irredeemable to the point where she killed her own, child, and Supergirl had to make the tough decision of putting her down.
To be honest, that's way too much. That's not gonna happen. It's way too much because like the CW is inherently a feel-good show. Like the one time they did a feels bad moment was when Laurel got killed, and that was like that blew the ratings to hell.
And Barry's dad.
So I don't think that, what?
Well, I mean, another feels bad moment was when Barry's dad died. I feel like, in the Flash.
Yeah, but that was something that kind of like it was like, okay, that's a terrible tragedy, but it's a tragedy the hero goes through.
Right, but a tragedy the fans go through was with Laurel. It was like, because it was such a random, like she was okay and then she died. It was like, oh, what?
Yeah, like we just got Sarah back.
They can't have too many lances on the show. They have like a quota they have to fill for a lance. They're over budget for lances.
And somehow Damien Dark is always involved, or the League of Assassins at least.
Like I said, I'm okay with Damien Dark being bad because we get Constantine at some point. So it's 10 out of 10. But yeah, I mean, I know the scenario I just said was pretty much impossible to happen on the CW, but if it did, man, I would love it. If it was
a Netflix show, maybe.
Right.
Because Netflix has not shied away from killing children, or at least the image of it.
Right.
But as long as it made sense,
Yeah, I feel like it would. like this would serve the plot in a way to make it become more serious and just like have more of like a tragic happy ending, not really like, you know, too happy for Samantha's family, but like happy for them to kill the villain, but also tragic because of who the villain was and what she did. But of course this is the CW and they would never do something like that, but it would surprise me in a good way if they did do something like that. But yeah, it is how it is. But however they handle the character, as long as they handle it well in a way that makes sense and continues the quality of the show so far and continues taking it higher, I'm okay with it. I'm
Yeah.
okay with it as long as they don't do it in a shitty way. And I'm really glad they're just revealing all these villains before the mid-season finale, because not only does it suck waiting week to week to find out who the villain was, like with Savitar, waiting the
Mm.
mid-season finale, like waiting like a whole month of like no episodes to like continue figuring out who it is. You're just left a whole month wondering with the material that you have, like, okay, who is Savitar, or you know, whoever the villain is. It's just like, come on, like it's nice to know before the
Yeah,
mid-season finale so that you're
it's
just
just
hyped.
too long, you know.
Yeah, yeah, and it just generates more hype. Like, okay, we just found out, and you know, I'm looking at the episode titles right now, and episode 9 for Supergirl is titled Rain, and so I'm assuming it's gonna definitely have something to do with rain, and it's
If you
gonna
didn't
just
realize that from like the title, then bad news.
right. So it's gonna, you know, it's gonna just generate more hype for the rest of the season. You're gonna be more hyped for it to come back and watch what more, like what else happens with the character
Mhm.
and like how they take that even further now that we know who it is and what kind of, you know, like what's their plan, what kinds of games are they gonna play, etc. But yeah, definitely enjoyed this episode. I really liked the beginning when John Jones was with his dad. He was talking about coffee. It's like this dark beverage, like coffee, and like just really weird Martian things like that, and like how he's fascinated by chess, and you know,
Yeah, that was a nice touch. That's a nice way of family bonding, you could say.
yeah. And then they kind of had like a bit of a, uh, not an argument, but like, you know, John Jones felt like he was like, oh, you're being a prisoner in the DEO. I want you to like walk around and whatever. And he's like, well, no, you're actually the prisoner of the DEO because that's all you think about. Because of course you have the mental link. And then they, you know, they got the apartment together and they're gonna, you know, have like a new home on Earth, which is really nice. You know, really cool family moments, which Supergirl has been doing a lot better this season too, with like the whole touchy-feely family stuff, which I really enjoy. Like I really,
Yeah,
like I
but
personally really
touchy-feely
enjoy that
family
stuff.
stuff that makes sense, you know. That's like natural and organic, not just thrown in your
E-
face.
Exactly, and I personally like that kind of stuff in TV shows when it does make sense. Just like really good feel-good moments like that between like, you know, families and stuff. But yeah, yeah, that's pretty much it for this episode. Like really good overall. How did you feel about it? Like I mean, like any last comments or things you want to discuss about this episode before we move
I
on?
got I got nothing so far.
Cool.
This episode was kind of it was okay. Like I preferred honestly the what's it called, the Midvale episode, but
Oh, of course.
it doesn't mean this episode was bad. It wasn't. It was good.
Oh yeah, by no means was it bad. It was setting up more for like the rest of the season. This was more of a plot setup episode, but
Mhm.
still had its own really good moments and stuff. Poor Kara. Poor Kara.
Yeah, she never seems to catch a break, whether as a kid or like as an adult.
Never. I really feel bad for her, but let's talk about was probably my favorite episode of the shows this week, which was The Flash, season 4, episode
Oh.
7.
Oh,
Therefore I am.
mine's was Legends, but go on.
Okay.
We'll get to that when we get to
Legends
that.
was close, but there are many reasons why I really like this episode of The Flash. First was that they gave us a clear backstory of DeVoe. Didn't wait 21 episodes, didn't make a stupid convoluted thing. They gave us a clear, clear cut. This is what his backstory was.
Yeah.
Didn't like
this
drag
is,
it
this is what
on.
happened.
And I also loved that they brought back Eobard Thawne Harrison Wells, because he was one of the factors that really hooked me on the show. Was just the performance of him, and then just his reveal as like being Eobard Thawne. I was like, oh, like that's so interesting that like he went back in time, and basically Reverse Flash basically made a whole new timeline that the Arrowverse is currently on. Like the current Arrowverse timeline isn't even the original timeline of the show's universe. The original
Yeah, it's all
timeline of the
because
show's
of Eobard
universe.
Thawne.
Yeah, the original timeline of the entire Arrowverse universe isn't like this at all. Like the Flash doesn't get his powers until like 2020, and like all this other stuff that happens that he made happen kind of earlier and different because of his involvement. But
Yeah, like just to screw with all your heads even.
right,
This information.
like like yeah, this is still pretty much an alternate timeline.
It's an alternate timeline. That's somehow the default time. God, it's like we don't even need Barry to break time for us anymore.
Yeah, Thawne already broke it, so Barry broke it 2 more times on top of that. Oh my goodness. But yeah, they did really well. This also was another really good, not really prequel episode, because the whole episode wasn't a prequel, but like it had prequel flashbacks, which really set up the villain's motivations. Um, didn't really reveal too much of his final plan, or I mean, like any at all, of like what he's planning to do, but kind of gave us more insight to the way he thinks, and no pun intended. Gave us more insight to like how he is as a character, how he is as a person, like his wife, who is the mechanic, who in the comics isn't his wife, but it's okay, like I like the dynamic that they have on the show, that like she's the inventor and he's like, the thinker. He's the one that comes up with the ideas and she invents them, and now with his infinite knowledge he kind of like also has a hand in that because he knows
What I
more
like,
things now.
what I like about this episode is that it's incredibly deconstructive. Like, if you want to go pulling that stuff that Barry did, you're just going to get into even more trouble. She's not exactly a what's it called? A morally good person. She's a morally questionable person, you could say, especially that she's working with DeVoe on whatever they're cooking up. But she does have a good point. You don't break into somebody's house like, whatever the reason.
I guess, but Barry, I feel like should have been
Dude.
more careful about that. Like he should have surveyed the house for cameras before trying to break in. Like, not only would they
Yeah.
figure out that you broke in, but the cameras could also pick up something that would show them that you're the Flash, which they already knew, but they could use it as evidence against them. Like how the whole stupid FBI plot point is happening right now, or subplot is happening right now with Arrow.
Yeah.
We'll talk about it in a minute when we get to the Arrow
Yeah, when we get to
episode.
it.
But yeah, we'll get to that. But yeah, like their motivations seem kind of odd. Like she seems like she's there like for her husband, and she wants to like
Yeah, which is
you know
nice.
like she's like typical like good wife, but also behind the scenes is also like his mechanic, and like his
Engineer.
his like engineer, and kind of like trying to help him with whatever plan he has, which we still don't really know what his plan is, which is okay. Like, not knowing the plan is okay, but not knowing who the villain is too is like kind of irritating, which was the
Yeah,
thing with
yeah.
Savitar. Again, we keep bringing that up to compare because it's important to bring it up to compare to the season, to just to show the improvements that they've been making this season. But seeing who the villain is and his backstory, and how that that even ties with like Eobard Thawne's character, and I feel like that might have been some hinting at him coming back. Like, it wasn't a direct hint or anything that indicated he would come back, but just the fact that Eobard Thawne's version of Harry was in an episode just kind of like gives me like personally just gives me hope that like maybe they'll bring back Eobard Thawne for something somehow this season. Maybe the crossover has something to do with it, no idea, but or maybe it's something in the back half of the season that we just don't know about yet. But I liked his reaction too when he got Eobard Thawne's Harry Wells' reaction when he got the question from Miss DeVoe, and he was like, "Oh, DeVoe," and he's like, "I assume that man next to you was your husband," and I was like, "Oh, he knows because he's from the future, so he definitely knows about Clifford DeVoe and the Thinker and everything." So it was like. It was like a nice little like nod to like like the continuity and like the fact that he's from the future, and just like it was just like nice to see the way he like reacted, and it wasn't like he like brushed it off. Like he actually like acknowledged that like, oh, this is the Thinker, in a way that like the fans could like look at it
They
and
could
understand.
understand, yeah.
Yeah, like it kept the continuity intact, which is always a good thing to see in these kinds of shows, especially when they go on for this long and have timey-wimey stuff.
Oh.
But I did enjoy that moment a lot. I just I feel like the team was a little too harsh on Barry. Like Barry's seen some shit. First of all,
Yeah,
he's
yeah,
been
but
through a
again,
lot.
again, like they do have a point.
No, they
You
do.
wanna take the fight to the vote, that's fine, but some hardcore proof is probably preferable.
Right. I mean, like, I understand where they were coming from, but I feel like they were too dismissive of him. Like, okay, like, let's see why he believes it so much. Like, let's, and I guess that's what they were trying to get out of him the whole episode. It's like, okay, what is your
Yeah,
proof? And I didn't
they
really
tend
have
to
any
have this.
proof.
They tend
Yeah.
to do this a lot in the Arrowverse shows. I think
Yeah.
to add drama.
Yeah, it's like kind of like fake tension at some points where it's like, like the whole team isn't on his side for like half the episode and they don't believe him and everyone's saying he's losing his mind. And then by the end of the episode, everyone's like, cool, we got your back. Which is like, of course they do because they're the main cast. They weren't gonna leave him. But, they weren't just gonna like not believe him and just tell him to fuck off or something. But I feel like it took him a little bit longer than I would have liked to get around to that. But at the same time, like, I feel like Barry made a dumb move by not wiretapping himself when he went to talk to DeVoe. Because he basically confessed. Clifford DeVoe basically confessed to everything. He's like, yep, that was me. And he was like...
Yeah, to be fair, Clifford DeVoe apparently predicted everything, so he probably would have found a way around that.
Maybe if he had like some kind of scrambler like in Mr. Robot, you know how he has that little scrambler he uses when he talks and when he knows there's a wiretap around, not to spoil too much of that.
Yeah.
But maybe, you're right, he might have used something like that, but I feel like Barry, as a person who works with the police and has been doing the whole Flash thing for like 3 years plus a few eternities, he should have at least thought of doing something like that, like maybe wear a wire to record it, or just have like an earpiece so someone on the other side can hear it, or something of the sort, to like kind of have more solid proof rather than just his word to his teammates that like, oh, I talked to him and he confessed, which I'm okay with them that they believed him, which they should. I mean, it's Barry, but I feel like he might have been able to make even Sigint believe him, or like the police, and just be like, look, I wasn't spying on him for no reason, here's proof, he said this and this. But then again, if they do that, that would probably speed things up too fast with DeVoe and make it so where like now he has pressure from Team Flash and the cops, which would fuck him up even more, and kind of like mess with the whole
story. He already has
story.
enough to deal with it.
Yeah, and kind of like mess with the story and put things too much in the favor of the good guys and not, DeVoe, which is okay. I feel like now it's kind of balanced, but from DeVoe's side, it seems like it's more leaning towards his, victory being inevitable, just from his end. It would be interesting if like he kind of won by the end of the season, not like fully win, but like not fully get defeated either. But we'll wait to see what happens. But I didn't know. I thought it was interesting, the whole idea and concept of like his brain is using so much energy that it's literally just sucking up power from the rest of his body and paralyzing him. And he has to use that weird chair thing that apparently also doesn't have enough power to sustain him now, so that's gonna be a nice little conflict for the villain to deal with, which again is great to see that the villain isn't just like some immortal being, like he has some weaknesses and he has like some internal and external conflicts that he's going through, and a loved one that something happened to them, like he could break, like something is, like again, he's three-dimensional, like you kinda sympathize with him in a way that like
makes sense.
Yeah, I mean, like you can kinda sympathize with him, but also like not really too much because we don't really know his plan and too much of his motivations, but like you can kinda like feel for him as like, okay, he wanted to just be like super smart, but then like the Flash kind of fucked him over with the whole lightning thing, and maybe he fucked him over even more, but we don't know yet. Like we don't know exactly why he's so hell-bent on like destroying the Flash and stuff, and Team Flash.
The Arrow one was the second time we see this, but we'll get to that when we get to that.
Yeah,
we're doing this. We keep going too ahead of ourselves.
Right. But it's nice to see them actually have some substance to this villain too, instead of just another speedster with a tragic backstory.
Up team bajillion times.
like Eobard Thawne had substance, and it was great.
Mhm.
Zoom was kind of the point where you're like, okay, this is good too, but like, come on, we're kind of over the speedster with a tragic backstory thing, and then
No,
Savitar just
it's not
showing
even.
everything.
The thing is, like Eobard Thawne is way more sympathizable than Zoom. Zoom is
Oh
just flat
yeah,
out I want to take over. He's an actual like legit psychopath.
exactly.
Thawne is just a jerk.
Thawne is an asshole. Thawne is a jerk trying to basically make sure he survives, but Barry doesn't, in a way that he makes it so where he doesn't evaporate once Barry stops being the Flash or dies or whatever, because in the comics and the show they've established the only reason he exists as the Reverse Flash is because of Barry. But it was like a really cool deep story, but then they kind of like diverted too much into the tragic speedster thing with season 3, but now they're actually making more like
It's not a
sympathizable
tragic
villains.
speedster. It's a tragic genius in a chair.
Yeah, and I like how he says the line like, "You're the fastest man, but I have the fastest mind," which is the whole theme of this season. It's like the fastest man alive versus the fastest mind alive. Like, who's gonna win? And we know eventually the cerebral inhibitor is gonna come into play because of Savitar Barry's predictions, or not really predictions, but because of what he said about it. Like, oh, this is where we came up with the cerebral inhibitor to stop DeVoe. You know, when he
Mhm.
was touring around Star Labs after they tried to make him go good for a minute. But yeah, really enjoyed this episode to show us like the backstory of Clifford DeVoe, and I liked that Wally came back at the end. Like we said earlier, he came back and talked about where he was, and how he's fighting freaking aliens or whatever.
Mhm.
So hopefully they have him in the crossover somehow since he's back. Well, I mean, of course he's gonna be at the wedding. It's his sister's wedding, so of course he's gonna be
Yeah.
involved in the crossover to some extent. Which I was kind of
Yeah.
worried
To some
about. I'm
extent.
like, he's gone. Is he gonna be in the crossover? But now he's back, so that's good. But
Mhm.
yeah, I mean, do you have any more comments to add to this episode? Anything you liked or
Like,
didn't like about his backstory,
no,
or
no, it was good.
how
Everything
they
was well,
showed it?
well actually.
Yeah, yeah, definitely a good episode. Now to your favorite episode of the week. Welcome to the jungle, the DC Legends,
Yes. The
DC
return
Legends,
of Mother freaking
Gorilla
Gorilla
Grodd.
Grodd. Yes.
Yeah, I love Gorilla Grodd as a villain, and I love that they keep bringing him back on the shows. It's pretty much been in every season since the Flash began, right? Or was he not?
Yeah, he
Yeah,
was. He was introduced in the first season.
right. Yeah, and then he was in season 2 and 3, and now this year he's on DC Legends. I like that. I like that they keep bringing him back, and that he was conveniently one of the anachronisms. And something they mentioned in the episode too, because this
Hmm.
episode we saw Mick meet his dad, like that the
Yeah.
anachronism happened, conveniently in the time period where he could go back and meet his dad. And they mentioned it too,
Mhm.
like they kind of brought this into light that like, oh, it's really weird that and coincidental that like some of these anachronisms or the more recent ones have been like involving their past versions, or like their parents or something like that, like how Ray had the thing with his younger self, like the anachronism was with his younger self, and um, Stein also, there was an anachronism last season with his younger self, and now this season it's a thing with mixed parents.
Yeah.
So maybe Mullis is trying to do something to make it so that the legends aren't born, or that they die young or something. Maybe the anachronisms are
Well,
meant to kill them, or I mean, they did kill Ray Palmer in that one episode. They killed the child Ray Palmer, and he disappeared. So maybe that's another indication to
well,
like that being a plan to like the anachronisms are meant to also fuck with the legends, but also like eradicate them, like during a point where they couldn't defend themselves unless the future version of themselves came to help. You know what I
to
mean?
be honest, if he's trying to accomplish that, he's doing a shit job at it.
He is doing a shit job, but maybe it's like a side project for him. Maybe it's like he has a main
It's a
plan,
side project.
but then he knows that the legends will like mess with him, so it's like he has like a little side project of trying to kill them young or something like that. You know what I mean? Or
Yeah,
like trying to
I
kill
get
their parents or something. Because Gorilla Grodd would have definitely killed Mick's dad,
you.
and
Oh boy,
and
he would have torn it into pieces.
right, and young Ray died. And they went back before he died and prevented that, and um I don't think Martin Stein was in any mortal danger, but he was going on a path which was gonna make him not become a scientist, so also not have Firestorm exist. So it's like a bunch of different, you know, it's like a bunch of different coincidences that seem like, you know, too good to just be coincidences. Like they just happen to run into their parents or their younger selves every time they go back
Yeah.
somewhere, or not every time, but like sometimes when they go back. And I like that they mentioned that, like they brought that into light, and I don't think that was just like thrown in there for no reason. I feel like that was done on purpose to maybe make it click in our minds as fans, like okay, like, or like put it in our minds somewhere, like
Hmm.
keep this in the back of your mind for later.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. I'm actually really looking forward to more Gorilla Grodd. I like the
Ah,
villain or the character.
yes. I don't know how they'll do it budget-wise because he's super expensive to have because he looks amazing in CGI. Like his CGI looks
Yeah,
really
yeah.
great.
Like they really put effort into CGI. It's kind of like spoiler alert, Ghost Rider and Agents of Shield season 4. Like they were actually having serious troubles with the character because of the special effects involved because they were trying to get it perfectly right, but it paid off, and
Right,
they ended up using him in a good way.
right, and it's just expensive to use someone like Grodd or you know Ghost Rider and people who are full CG like that in more than one episode or more than a few episodes because you know it's just sometimes the shows don't have a kind of budget like that, and it's
Exactly.
and that stuff takes a lot of time and effort to get right. Even if you do have the budget, it still takes a lot of time to get it you know, to get it to look the way you want it to look, so it doesn't look cartoony and stupid and corny and people make fun of
Yeah,
it,
yeah,
you know. Um,
yeah.
and I'm interested to see what they do because at the end of the episode, Damien Dark swoops him up, brings him into present day, which apparently he's in present day too. So I
Mhm.
guess he's taking a little pit stop from time traveling to go and get some Burger King or something. Like, there ain't no Burger King in Hollywoodland. I gotta go back here.
Oh God.
Or
You
sorry,
said you
Big
were
Belly
you.
Burger.
Yeah, I want to. I wonder what a big belly burger would be like.
Probably like any other fast food burger.
A fast food chain burger restaurant, whatever. What's it called? You said you were confused about something in this episode.
Oh no, it's just because like I wasn't paying attention at some points, so like some of the stuff that was happening with Gorilla Grodd and the team kind of confused me. This isn't gonna be in the video, but I was just a little confused as to like the course of the events that happened, but I kind of just like looked back at it and I, you know, figured it out, just like what was happening. It was more like when Zari was like hacking the thing and like the one lady was trying to stop her and then like something distracted me and then I see them all like on the ground and stuff with like Mick over them like wait what happened.
Nice job.
Oh, and I'm like oh okay, he was just kind of helping his dad so he can help everyone else out, and it kind of worked
Mhm.
out. But yeah, so that part's not gonna be in the video, but this will be.
Yeah, that's okay.
Yeah. Um, but yeah, I mean, I really liked how they even gave Mick a chance to kind of go back and see his dad, who he let die, and kind of like reconcile with him and just kind of like Nate was saying, have that tough love moment with his father. And the actor they brought in for that was like really good too. Like he kind of like looked and sounded like he would be his dad. And it made sense to
Yeah,
why his dad was crazy in present time too, because you know, I mean, I don't say crazy like that, you know, like why he was the way he was because of like, you know, PTSD from Vietnam and you know things like that, which is why he might
yeah.
have been abusive to his children, which is something
Look.
that is unfortunately common with veterans, or more
Mhm.
common than it should be with like war
Exactly.
veterans and stuff like that, just because of what they go through, which is just really like sad and tragic. But
Mhm.
gave him more depth as a character and gave him some development. Now he doesn't burn his skin anymore, which I feel like he did as like a guilt thing for killing his dad, or as
Yeah.
something,
Well,
or not really killing
again,
him, but letting him die.
again, character development.
Yeah, anytime that
Rule number
happens is
one
good,
of a good show.
especially for a character that I feel didn't really have too much development in a while. Like Mick's a good
Mhm.
character, don't get me wrong, and the whole thing with season 1 and Kronos, when he was the time traveling Kronos and whatever, like that was interesting. But like,
Hmm.
and aside from like his interactions and his relationships with different various team members that have grown, he didn't really have any personal character development in a while, you know? Like he himself as a character has been pretty much the same since most of season 2 and so far this season, but now he's kind of grown as a character some more because of his interactions with his dad. And I
Hmm.
mean, I guess that is the silver lining to like um them going back and interacting with like the past, like with their own past or like with their family's past, which is like them giving themselves more character development. Like Ray had more character development, like Stein had more character development from meeting their younger selves, and now you know,
Hmm.
and now Mick Rory has more character development from meeting his dad and seeing him
Hmm.
before, you know, like when he was in the war, before he got, you know, before he became a father. But I'm really curious as to what he was gonna tell him at the end that he didn't tell him, because he was saying, if you have a kid that's a son, and then he was like, and then he was like, never mind, and he didn't say what he was gonna say. I'm really curious to what was he thinking, you know, what was he about to say that he decided not to. It would have probably like messed a
Yeah.
little bit with the timeline or the development of things, of how they happened. Because if you think about it, if he was then to go back and become a good father, Mick wouldn't have burnt his house down. He wouldn't have become Heatwave, essentially, and they wouldn't have. I mean, he
Yeah.
might
So
have still
that
ended up becoming Heatwave in some weird circumstance, but it would have kind of messed his own backstory up.
yeah,
So,
yeah, like we already don't we already have enough time travel fuckery to go through?
right, so I mean, sadly, he did leave things how they were, you know, and
Hmm.
make them go how they will go with him letting his father die and stuff, but at least now he, you know, had some personal moments with him,
Yep.
but, you know, to kind of like help him with that, but it is still sad that he has to let things happen the way they should happen, which is the
Hmm.
shitty thing about time travel sometimes. Like you just can't change things a certain way, otherwise you mess everything else up. It's the butterfly effect. You
Exactly. Like you have to specify exactly what kind of rules you're working with whenever you do time travel.
yeah.
Like, is it gonna be like is it one of those things where you can't change things in the past no matter how hard you try? Is it gonna be one of those things where you can change it but like you can kind of fix it again? Or is it gonna be one of those things where you can change but then you can't change and then you blow up the universe, some kind of paradox? And you have to be very clear about what rules you're setting for time travel, because if you keep flip flopping between the rules, you end up with inconsistency, which just creates
Flash.
more confusion and more angry emails to the writer saying, "What nonsense is this?"
Yep. The Flash.
Oh,
Pretty much.
like,
Yeah, that's the difference between time travel and
we
Legends and the
have a
Flash.
time loop now. We don't have the time loop anymore, so none of that stuff should have happened. But somehow it still happened.
Yep. Like
That's all.
the moment he finds out that Savitar was buried at the end of season 3, literally the whole season should have been erased. The whole season should have been reset and Savitar should have vanished right there because he wouldn't have done the thing that created him in the first place. But it's a time
Exactly.
loop. But it's a time loop, so whatever. Time loops are the fucking worst. So confusing. But um but yeah, any other comments on this really fantastic and fun episode of Legends?
I got nothing honestly. Like again, it was a very fun episode. Looking forward to seeing what more could come of this.
I'm really more interested to see what happens with Gorilla Grodd and Damien Dark and Malice. Like if he's gonna end up being a regular villain or like a secret weapon they bring out every now and then just for budgetary reasons, you know.
Yeah, yeah,
Oh,
yeah, yeah, I get you.
but we'll see. We'll see. I'm really pumped to
Yeah.
see what happens. But now let's get on to Arrow. Final show we're gonna
Hmm.
talk about before we do a little bit of a discussion on the Crisis on Earth X thing, which we really aren't gonna get into that much because we've been recording for almost 2 hours. But
Holy shit!
yeah,
Okay, I didn't expect us to be going that long.
I know. So we'll try and keep this last part brief. Really, nothing too much happened this episode to really dive into, other than the fact that it, it seems that Kate and James is gonna be either sharing a big bad role with Richard Dragon or with Ricardo Diaz, or it's gonna be like Caden James is like the main big bad, and then Ricardo Diaz is like the small bad. He's like the big bad that's not really the big bad, who's just gonna come in every now and then and cause havoc. Because he did say he has like a long-term plan with his bomb, like this weird bomb he had that they thought was gonna explode this episode, but that was a decoy. All the reason was like the whole reason was just so Caden James can talk face to face with the Arrow.
Yeah.
In which he
and
revealed that plan.
Which leads me to the two things that, and 2 hours ago I was talking about. First, I'm pretty sure that the show writers were working around the pun for every single episode in some manner or form, and that with this episode, I'm sure they structured it because, you know how the what's it called, the concert is at the Billy Joel concert.
Yeah.
Okay, and the idea is they're trying to find Caden James to stop his thermobaric bomb, which is basically like a napalm bomb but worse.
Right.
It's like a fire bomb. Turns out there isn't any bomb. Caden just wanted to talk to Oliver, okay? It's at Billy Joel's concert, and James didn't start the fire. I am 100% sure they intended this.
Oh my god, GTFO.
I am 100% sure the show writers were doing this.
Well, they are big fans of Billy Joel, so it's that.
So is Renee, by the looks of it.
Yeah, so that would be a funny, like, deep cut Easter egg for them to put in there.
Yeah, and now to the other one, the second one, which is actually like something that it worked against this episode, to be honest. Do you remember when you were talking last episode? You were talking about how you were really annoyed about the inconsistency and the weakness of the Flash, and the strengths of the Flash. Like, he's fast enough to go do all these things while a pancake is flipping in the air, but he can't see a punch coming right in his face.
Right.
You're complaining about that, okay?
Mm-hmm.
Something of a similar form happened here. The first time we saw Black Siren, which was in the Flash, she nearly blew out Barry's eardrums with a sonic scream that could basically kill people because of how high the decibels were.
And also almost leveled the building.
Yeah, they would have leveled the building. So why didn't that same thing happen to Oliver here?
Maybe she was holding back.
Holding back a guy, dude. Come on, she had so many opportunities to hold back. Like, she's been going all out this whole time.
Right. I mean, like, I'm just saying. Like, I feel like that would be their justification. It's like, oh, she was holding back. It's like in Dragon Ball Super when fucking Goku goes blue, like his Super Saiyan blue. Not to talk too much about that, but like just to give an example, like. Yeah. Sometimes he's like strong enough to fight the fused god, and then sometimes Krillin is able to push him back with his own Kamehameha, like in like a beam struggle. It's like, what? And then the excuse is just like, oh, he's just holding back and doing key control and whatever the fuck. But it's just like, then don't make him fight in blue. Like then that just exactly. Like discounts that form. Then that form just looks weak in some points and strong in other points where it needs to be. So it's like the same thing here with the Flash, and now I guess Black Siren, which is like. Sometimes they're super strong, and then sometimes and like fucking god level, and then sometimes they're just like, they're like street, like street villain level.
Yeah, it's like they're not even worth talking about, and then like in other points, they'll tear the world apart or something.
Yeah.
It gets frustrating. It gets really frustrating.
Yeah, definitely. That's been like one of the big things that like is frustrating fans with Dragon Ball Super was. The whole inconsistency with Goku's power, but that can be chalked up to key control and holding back, but...
And all that nonsense,
yeah.
Let's be honest. It's good, because that's what it is, it's nonsense.
Yeah, but it's just like, it's not good storytelling.
Exactly, it's not good storytelling at all if you have to fall back on that. Let's just call it what it is, an excuse.
Yeah. Just don't make him use that form when he's fighting weak characters then.
Exactly. Like consistency or get full.
Yeah, and with Black Siren, I don't think she was really holding back. I think they just made her weaker for that part because there's no reason for her to hold back. Like at least with Goku, like there's a reason. Like he's not trying to kill Krillin. He's trying to spar with him. So he's holding back,
Yeah.
but he's using the form that he can best hold back with, which is the one that gives him best key control. But
Mhm.
with the Flash and Siren, it's like there's no reason to hold back. It's like, why are you holding back when you're fighting a villain or you're fighting an enemy? It's like, like you're
Yeah.
supposed to be going all out. You're supposed to be using all your power. You're supposed to be even stronger right now, and you're going
Especially if you're the bad guy, one would assume you want to get rid of the problem, not like play with it. You're not a cat.
right. And especially her, like she's been killing people with no problem. Like, I don't think her as a character that she has any problem with really killing any of the heroes. Like she has no love for this Oliver. She has no love for his team. Not that we've seen. She has no love even for this version of her dad. So why would she hold back? It just makes no
Exactly.
sense. So yeah, no, I do agree with your criticism on that. It's just like the whole power
It's
and
really arbitrary.
consistency stuff with metahumans. It's just, I feel like it's because metahumans are just really hard to write in situations where they would be at a disadvantage. Because if realistically someone like the Flash existed on this earth, there wouldn't be a single issue that he would face in his life. What would be a problem for someone like the Flash? Nothing, unless it was someone that was just as fast as him. Like there would literally be no problem that someone who can use something like the Speed Force that fast can run into.
An Ice Cube, I guess.
I mean, I guess, but you would still be able to run fast enough to like be able to see
Yeah.
that coming. You'd still be able to see that coming if you're like like running fast, or everything is basically slow motion around you, like sidestep it or something. Like
Yeah.
there has to be
Yeah,
some
I-
solution
I-
using that power, but not being able to get hit by a statue. Yeah, but that's definitely a big problem with the Arrowverse. The Arrow show does it a lot less, of course, because they don't have as many metahumans, which is why I think they keep the villains like pretty grounded on that show.
Mhm.
Mostly because if it was a metahuman, it would be really hard for them to deal with it, and they would have to always get Barry's help and things like that. Um, but which is also another thing. If that was a realistic, if any of this show was like realistic, or the Arrowverse was realistic, Barry could just zip back and forth between Star City and Central City and just help Oliver out really quick whenever he needed it. Like, I feel like that's something he could do, because he's that
Exactly.
fast. But yeah, then that would just ruin Arrow, because anytime they'd be stuck, they'd be like, help, Barry, help.
That's why we have this particular trope. Superman stays out of Gotham. Okay, because if Superman was going to solve all of Batman's problems for him, then there wouldn't have been that much development, anyways.
Right.
And B, in this specific example, last time we saw Superman interfere in Gotham, it was an injustice, and we all know how that worked out.
Yeah, pretty much. That's why it's really hard to write around characters who are god level like that. Like Supergirl is pretty much god level, and she has Superman who is somewhat
It's like
available.
next level God level.
Yeah, he's like the highest of the god levels, and maybe their Earth also has a speedster of some kind, that we don't know about yet, but they do have access to the Flash whenever they would need him, which is of course what's gonna happen with the crossover. They're gonna, cross over.
Yeah, exactly what it says on the tin.
Yep. But yeah, other than the inconsistency with Black Siren's powers, like, I feel like Caden James might be more of like the big bad, because he does seem like he has more of like the long-term plan with Team Arrow, because it always
Mhm.
seems like the big bad always has like a long-term plan, not just like a one-episode plan. But I don't know. It's like the other shows are doing really well to establish like this is the big bad, this is who we're dealing with, and then Arrow is kind of like, this is the big bad, but then this one's also a big bad, like with
Yeah,
Ricardo
it's not
Diaz.
being very clear, which is not something that's in his favor, to be honest.
Yeah, like it's kind of like, yeah, like you said, it's not working in its favor, but at the same time, it's kind of interesting because we at least know who the candidates are, and we know who they are as characters so far. I mean, not too much about Ricardo Diaz. Like, we know something about him at least, and we know how he's tied to Team Arrow in a way.
Yeah,
with the whole drug thing.
the problem with these shows is that they use the strongest villains first, which is really annoying. Like for example, Flash used Reverse Flash and Zoom. Arrow used Deathstroke, which wasn't even an Arrow villain, but they just threw him
Right.
there because it
Oh,
made
let's be
sense.
real. Let's be real.
Black
Arrow.
Archer, Russell Ghul.
Right. Let's be real though. Arrow was pretty much like the pseudo Batman show. Like Green Arrow in the first few seasons was pretty much more like Batman than he was Green
The
Arrow.
first season more than anything else.
Yeah, he was like Batman who kills people.
Yeah.
Because they were going off the hype of the Christopher Nolan movies. Because that came out, after those movies were like all the hype, and that kind of like fed on that kind of hype, and
The problem, I don't know, man, because if it fed off on the hype, then it would have released back in 2008. That's one, and two.
well, the residual hype.
Maybe, because it came out like a year after Dark Knight Rises, which was, well, I liked it, but a lot of people didn't, and I can see why.
See, not to get too much into it, like I liked it, but there were some things that were just like too unrealistically stupid, like how he was able to drive the nuke all the way like out of the danger zone and then also get himself to safety in that short amount of time, where in that short amount of time he had like 45 seconds to make out with like fucking Catwoman. It's like, bro, you're on a timer, a nuclear timer. Move your ass. Get going.
Yeah, I get you there.
It wasn't a bad movie. It just like had so many stupid inconsistencies and like just weird things. I was just like, what the fuck? Like it wasn't the same kind of quality as like The Dark Knight. The Dark Knight was like pretty like concise. Everything made sense in the movie's universe that happened. But then the third one just kind of said fuck it to some of the rules it made for itself. But anyway, but anyway, I'm excited to see what happens with the rest of the season, to see like who is really the big bad. Because right now, to me personally, it seems like Caden James is more of the big bad, and it's cool because they kind of like have him from like last season. Like he's the one that basically Team Arrow rescued, and now he's gonna it's biting them in the ass, because which I kind of like that kind of way of storytelling. It's like really interesting to see like something that the heroes do, which they think is good, that turns around to like bite them in the ass, and then they have to like kind of like reconcile with that. But I really don't like the FBI side story thing. I just don't like it, because I think the FBI agent is just like too much. Like she's just too over the top with her like.
She's too much of a twat, like in an unrealistic way.
Yeah, like she's just being too harsh on like Arrow and like Oliver Queen and his team and stuff. She's like treating them like they're the ones who were trying to blow up the city in season 1 or 2 or 3 or 4. Like, come on, dude. Like, or even 5. Like, like they've saved the city countless times.
I'm pretty sure in real life law enforcement agents are not this much of a dick.
I don't know, man. I don't know. Have you seen the police in America? I'm just saying.
Well, I know that police can be jerk offs, but like there's a degree to which there's a jerk offy degree in a way, like, and she's just, I don't know.
She's just too over the top, like
Over
with
the
her
top,
persecution of Team Arrow and vigilantes, and like the vigilantes.
Persecution's a hard word. Persecution is a hard word.
Well, she arrested him this episode. She basically like arrested him, and then like they had to like bail him out with Felicity's angel investment money, which was just super convenient, but made sense in the plot because they were doing the startup thing. So it wasn't like an ex machina thing. It was like just something convenient that had happened that they already set up. But it's just like, I don't know, man. It's like she's just looking at the situation completely wrong. It's like, yeah, sure, Oliver Queen did kill people in his first season, and we already faced those consequences last season. Like that's done. Like that came full circle. Like we're all good with that. Like he faced the consequences for it.
I have a sinking feeling she's working for somebody.
She has to be, man. Like she seems way too like villainous a little bit. Like she seems a little bit villainous too, Like I don't know, like she's obviously not a villain, but she just seems like kind of evil, like with how much she's going after the team. Like she's taking her job like way too seriously. Like there's justice, but then there's also like common sense. You know, like you can't just have blind justice on everything. Like that, you know,
Yeah.
you can't just apply blind justice to everything. Like every situation is different, and in this situation, like yeah, he killed people, but to be fair, those were shitty people that he killed in season one, and then he hasn't really killed that much or at all in a while. He hasn't killed in a while, and then since season one, he didn't really kill that many people because he was kind of going back to like not killing. You know, he was kind of trying to like veer off that path to
Yeah.
being like more of a pacifist but still a badass.
Hmm.
Which you know they've done a good job of that on the show, but it's just like I just don't like it. It just like distracts from like the big bad story. It just distracts from like what's really going on, and like I guess the reason is to kind of do the whole John Diggle side story where he is the Green Arrow for a while, and now I guess it's working out because like they do the John Diggle story and they do the drug side story with him, which ties into Ricardo Diaz, and now he has to stop being Green Arrow eventually. So they're doing the thing where he has withdrawal symptoms from the drugs, and the
Yeah.
new thing isn't really working. But then at the end of the episode, they made it seem like it was gonna work out, and he was gonna go back to being the Green Arrow, which I'm really confused about because next episode he's definitely not gonna be the Green Arrow.
Yeah. Exactly.
Or even after that, I don't think he's gonna be Green Arrow anymore in the second half of the season. I think maybe the mid-season finale is gonna, if he is gonna be the Green Arrow anymore, it's gonna be the last of it. Like the last that we're gonna see of it is gonna be in the mid-season finale. You know,
Hmm.
I don't think they're really gonna drag that on too long with Oliver Queen not being Green Arrow, or like just not being involved too much. But um, I don't know. I think he was just being a little bit of an asshole this episode with how he was talking to Oliver and stuff. Like, I told the team, like, you're not on the team anymore. It's like, bro, come on. You did a shitty thing, and like, you kept a pretty big secret from everybody. And I'm pretty sure if he knew you were compromised like this, he wouldn't have let you take on the responsibility of the hood. So.
Exactly.
And it's not like he forced him. He just asked him, and he was like, "Yeah, I'll do it." And he was like, "Oh, I did this to help you and your family. That's all I've been ever doing is just helping you and your family." It's like no one asked you to, bro. That's what you want to do.
No, actually, to be fair, Oliver did ask him.
I mean, he asked him, but like nobody forced him. You know, like that's what I mean. Like nobody like has his hands tied and just like, no, you have to do this or we'll cut your head off. Or like, no, that's like. It's like he wants to do it because he's Oliver's friend, and now he came back this episode like he was coming at him like, "Oh, you made me do this." Like, no one made you do this, man. Come on. What I did like at the end of the episode was that Thea is awake.
Yeah, I'm
Finally.
happy.
Yeah.
I feel happy now.
Did they say why? They said like
She just woke up.
she
You don't have to ask why. She's just
right.
awake.
She
It's, usually I'd get annoyed, but I'll make it for once because I'm tired of banging on about it.
right. They joked about the Lazarus pit, but I don't think that's actually why she came back. That would be weird. But they did
Yeah,
make
that'd
that
be way
joke
too
about
weird.
the Lazarus pit. Um, but yeah, I did enjoy that she, I do like that she's back now, and
Mhm.
hopefully they'll do something with her for the rest of the season. Hopefully she'll become speedy again and get back
I
on
think
the
she's
squad.
gonna. I have no idea what role she plays in the crossover, but I know she's present for a bit. She probably doesn't do anything, but I know she exists there.
Okay, right. Well, that's good. But yeah, um, well, I guess speaking of the crossover, what are you most excited to see in the crossover?
I am most excited to see what the world of Earth X looks like, because a show that I really like on TV right now, The Man in the High Castle, basically talks about a world where the Axis, not just Germany, by the way, Germany and Japan won World War II, and America has basically fallen under their control.
Oh, okay.
Something like that. It's a complicated form of alternate history, but it's one that's really good, and it's really nice because they're not trying to show, oh my god, Nazis that have taken over. It's like, okay, the Nazis have taken over. Let me just go to the store and get my food. You know, it's putting it in a very naturalist way that's not overdoing it. You know, they're not trying to overdo the whole Nazis are evil shit. Okay, and like the show itself is very well done, and I read the book that the show was based on, and it was a fantastic book also by Philip K. Dick. who also wrote Do Androids Dream of Electric Sheep, which was the basis for Blade Runner, and he also wrote the book Minority Report, which they did the movie. And that all these films have been like classics, so you know how important this book is. And Ridley Scott, I think, was the helmsman behind the show for The Man in the High Castle. So the world building there is amazing. Like you get to see Berlin, what it would have looked like under Hitler's vision. It looks gorgeous. Okay, not to try and make the Nazis look cute, cool, or whatever, or look good, but it looks incredible. So I'm really looking forward to seeing how Earth X applies that, and bonus points if they include the reference to The Man in the High Castle. That's
Cool.
it has to be obligatory. Otherwise it's a missed opportunity.
That would be interesting. I haven't seen that, but that does sound pretty interesting.
hmm I would recommend you check out the show if you're interested in like history stuff. But like
Yeah.
other than that,
I'll have to check it
uh,
out.
yeah, I think you already have enough on your plate.
Yeah, seriously. But it still doesn't hurt to, you know, keep that on the keep on the list, you know?
Yeah.
Um but yeah, I think for me what I'm really most excited about is just to see how the interactions are between our versions of the characters and the Earth X versions of the characters are gonna be like.
Oh yeah, because I saw there was in the trailer where Kara is apparently captured, and you get to see the other Kara, the Earth X Kara.
Yeah.
There's some serious injustice vibes going on there, and I love it.
Yeah, yeah, it does feel very injustice-y, which is what we were talking about too before. We said another good crossover idea when we were talking about this year's crossover ideas. We said it would be pretty badass if they did something like Injustice, which I guess they are doing.
Yeah,
They're doing
yeah.
kind of something like Injustice. Yeah, so
They're merging in ideas from Injustice and Earth X and whatever, which is fine.
right, yeah. Um,
Yeah,
So
I'm
I
not
do like
complaining.
that a
I'm
lot.
cool with this.
yeah, I do like that a lot because Injustice is one of the best DC stories that have ever been written.
It's probably the best. Let's not mince things around. It's
Okay.
probably the best.
True, yeah. If not the best, it's one of the best stories that DC has ever written, especially in modern times. We can probably say it's the best in modern times. And,
Yeah,
well,
definitely.
there have been some really fantastic stories that have come out recently, especially like the current stories going on with the Button and all that stuff, which I really need to catch up on.
Wait, the button?
Yeah, like the Watchmen crossover that's going on right now in DC Comics.
Okay.
Yeah.
I didn't know there was a Watchmen crossover.
Oh, dude, you have to read Flash Rebirth and Batman Rebirth, so and then at some point they cross over to where they find this thing. They find the Watchman button, and then that story leads them to them finding the Watchmen, and like having interactions with them, and that's currently leading to a big storyline where the Watchmen and DC is gonna clash in some way, like. You know, like
Oh, wow.
the Justice League and DC are gonna clash in some way, and I saw like an advertisement for it, and the cover looks fantastic. Oh, you would love it.
There's an event going on right now with like alternate versions of the heroes or something like that, but I didn't get around to catching up to it.
Yeah, you need to just catch up to the whole Button storyline. Like it's
There's a
great.
lot of things I gotta catch up to. Involving it.
Yeah.
It's been a while. I have to catch up on the Green Lanterns, Hal Jordan, the Green Lantern Corps, Justice League. There is Injustice 2. I think there was another comic that I was reading, but I forgot what it was.
Right. I have so many comics to catch up on, man. It's not even funny. Like, oh my god. Especially that. I need to catch up on that and Secret Empire. Yeah, do you have anything else to add to our really long discussion?
No, I don't. No, I'm just really hyped for the crossover.
Same. I can't wait. It's gonna start tomorrow. Cool. So
Screw you. It's gonna start for me after tomorrow.
that's what you get for living 7 hours ahead.
Like I have a choice in the matter.
Oh my god. But anyway, thank you Bashar for joining me today. Thank you guys for watching. We hope you guys are just as hyped as we are for the crossover. Leave a comment
Yeah,
below.
you better be because that looks pretty freaking awesome.
Yeah. Please let us know in the comments below what you think. If you agree or disagree with anything that we said, if you want to correct us for anything that we said, please feel free. I know we're not always right about everything. And yeah, make sure you like it if you enjoyed it. And yeah, subscribe so you can catch more of this. We have gaming content on our channel. We have all kinds of fun stuff that we are planning and have already put on the channel too. So please make sure to catch up on some of that stuff or subscribe so you can never miss anything from us, and we will see you for next week's discussion of the crossover. This has been Zal,
And this has been Bashar.
and we will catch you guys next time. Peace out.
Yes. Goodbye.